Hi, it's Lynn Shuck with Healing and Balance, and we're going to look at an instruction I give often, but it's hard to do. I talk about reaching out of the hip socket through your legs. Now, I say this because often if people lift their leg up in front, what they do is they pull the hip in. The hip flexors and the quads work really hard, and the leg gets pulled deep into the hip socket. And when people try and reach out of the hip socket, what they end up doing is they kind of take their whole body forward. They don't actually get the leg to go out of the hip socket. What do we mean by out of the hip socket? So here it's pulled in. I'm going to reach out of the hip socket. It's a small movement, but you can see my foot if you look at my foot and the edge of the screen, right? That's a hard thing to do. That, for me, is like showing off doing handstands. That little movement is really hard. So we use a belt to help with it. And if we do it standing, we still can have the same problem. So we're going to start working on it lying down. So if I lie down on the mat and I put one foot into the belt and hold on to it with my hand, I again could pull with my hand and jam my leg into my hip, or I can let gravity drop my leg down into the hip joint, but I could also reach out of the hip joint, pressing lightly into the belt and feeling this leg try and reach away from the floor. I feel my lower abdominal muscles working. I feel this leg getting lighter, my pelvis is lighter on the floor versus this. It's small, but it's also huge. I'm going to do the other side just to feel a little more comfortable. And again, I'm going to press very lightly into the belt. I'm only holding on with my hand to keep a little tension. I'm not pulling really hard and trying to pull my leg down. I'm trying to push my leg away from my torso. Now you can do this at any height. It doesn't have to be a 90-degree angle. So then when I get up to standing and I use the belt, I would put the belt on my foot and I take my leg out in front of me. And again, instead of pulling into the hip, I'm going to try and push out of the hip socket without leaning back with my torso and hips going forward of my foot. I want to be able to push out into the belt, settle some weight into my supporting heel, and lift up through my head. Again, this leg could be as high as you want to work, but the idea of not pulling in but pushing out. You will use more arm effort because you're helping hold your leg up there when you're doing this standing than when you're lying down. When you're lying down, you're just trying to keep enough tension in the belt that you can push into it. Because it's very hard to push into your own skin or to push into the air. So again, one more time, you want to put the belt around your foot. It does not matter if it's around the arch or the ball of the foot or the heel, that's your preference. Notice my arm is long before I start, so if I start with it bent and then pick my leg up, I end up with an arm way up in my ear. So my arm is long. I could even adjust my arm further out. And again, I'm going to push out into the belt, shift a little weight onto my heel and lift up through my spine. So I have all this energy going out in the three directions from my pelvis where I'm extending, upward, downward, and forward at whatever angle. Give it a try. Grab, if you don't have a yoga belt, so this is a very long one, I just folded it in half. If you have a yoga belt that's shorter, then you make a loop and put your foot in the loop and do it that way. And if you don't have a yoga belt, an old tie, some webbing, a long scarf. It doesn't have to be particularly anything fancy, just something that's not stretchy that you could push gently into. Okay, so give it a try, see if you can push out of your hip joint.